I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on GBM, we are joined by a historian and best-selling author. His name is Marc J. Seifer, PhD. He is bringing epic historical fiction to life in a powerful book. Maxwell Chronicles, Doppelganger and Crystal Night special two-book saga. This sweeping, research-rich saga blends World War I aviation, the rise of Nazi Germany, and a modern-day investigative thriller with big secrets and bigger stakes. If you love World War II history, multi-generational drama, and twisty mystery, you're going to want to read this one, and you're going to want to hear this interview. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put him on TV today, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Marc, thanks so much for joining me here today.
Thanks for having me, Logan.
Great to have you on the show. Let's start with the idea. What sparked the idea for the Maxwell family and the larger world of the Rudy Stein quadrilogy?
Yeah, it all started really back in the early 1970s. I was at the University of Chicago taking a course with Bruno Bettelheim. And Bruno Bettelheim was the world's leading psychoanalyst. And the story that I had heard that he got out of Buchenwald concentration camp in 1939 because he had a letter of introduction from Eleanor Roosevelt. I knew him very well. Many years go by and he passed away, and I read a biography on him, and I found out that's not at all how he got out of Buchenwald. What happened was the Nazis had kidnapped him, and his father owned a lumber yard. And what the Nazis would do, they'd want 10 cents on the dollar. They had to do it legally. So they said, if you want Bruno back, we want to buy your $100,000 lumber yard for $10,000, and we'll give you back your son. So they paid the $10,000. They got back their son. That was one story, but what really hit me was that the flight tax to get out of Austria was $10,000. So I now began to look at the Holocaust not as a way to just kill the Jews, but as a way to steal their assets. Now what do you do with the people? And so what I did was I wrote to the Simon Wiesenthal Center in Austria. They gave me the name of 900 companies from just from Hamburg that was stolen by the Nazis. And I went through the list and I came up with a motor works and I morphed it into an airline. And so the concept of the novel basically would be is that this Jewish family, the Maxwells, Elias and Simon Maxwell, would start an airline in southern Bavaria, and they'd go through World War I and they'd go through World War II, and the Nazis would take the airline. Some of them would end up in the concentration camps, and then 50 years later, Abe Maxwell, the son of Elias, would return. He'd be about 90 years old, and he'd want his company back, which had been absorbed into Lufthansa, and it's now worth $1 billion. And that was basically the plot of which got me started on the book.
Yeah, well, it's an amazing inspiration, amazing story, and of course, rooted in history, of course. Why did you choose an ace reporter as the backbone for connecting the past and present narratives?
It had to do with the first novel that I wrote, which is called Rasputin's Nephew. I taught psychology for 40 years, but I also taught parapsychology. And I was friends with Uri Geller, the psychic who's still in Israel. He bends metal with his mind. And in 1977, Robert Toth, who was a writer for the San Francisco Chronicle, was arrested in Moscow for getting a paper on brainwaves and ESP. And it made the front page of the New York Times. But every other newspaper, and Walter Cronkite and ABC and NBC, CBS, they all said that Toth was arrested for a science paper. They didn't say he was arrested for a paper on telepathy and brainwaves. And Uri Geller had messed up on the Johnny Carson show, so he split town. So I wrote a novel about that, and I needed an ace reporter. And I chose the name Rudy Stein, was a takeoff on Rudolf Steiner, who's a very famous metaphysician. And so I have the ace reporter, Rudy Stein, trying to find out about parapsychology, whether or not it's real. And that became my first novel, and there's a super psychic in it, based kind of on Uri Geller. And then once I had the second idea for the second novel, I decided to keep the same character, Rudy Stein, and he'd be on the trail of a major computer hacker who's trying to take over the internet. kind of like an Elon Musk, but an evil Elon Musk. And so he goes to Germany to interview the Stephen Jobs of Germany, and he runs into his doppelganger, his
Mm.
lookalike, and they see each other's eyes in the airport. And during the time he's in Germany, his mother had eaten mushrooms in New York City, and she needed a liver transplant. So he's got to fly back to New York, and he finds out he's not biologically related to his mother. She
Mm.
survives. And so he now knows that he's been adopted, and this is a shock to him. And so now, who is his doppelganger? And the doppelganger will be linked to the backstory of the Maxwells, who start this airline at the turn of the century and go all the way through World War One and World War Two.
Wonderful. Well, I like any story that's got a strong reporter role in it, that's for sure.
I understand
So if you're
why.
looking to cast Rudy Stein, keep me in mind. Have you envisioned this as a TV series or a series of films?
I think would make a great, well, it'd be two movies because it's a very large story.
Hmm.
What I did was I really studied the history of airline flight. And I embedded because they start an airline. So Simon Maxwell, who's the ace mechanic, he will end up flying for the Kaiser during World War One. So I studied the Blue Max and I studied the Red Baron, Baron Richthofen, and I found to my complete surprise that the Blue Max was Jewish. His name was Max Immelmann. So one of the greatest airline pilots of early Germany was Jewish.
Wow.
I also found out that the movie Valkyrie about the assassination or attempted assassination of Hitler.
Mm.
I had the whole thing with Klaus Stauffenberg in the book. He had a sister-in-law. Her name was Melita Stauffenberg. She
Mm.
was Jewish and she was a test pilot for Goring. Goring flew with the Red Baron and would fly with Simon. So as the story develops, they have an in with the highest Nazi official underneath Adolf Hitler because they know him from World War One. So that protects the Maxwell for a while. They'll eventually end up in concentration camps and the company be taken over. But Goring is a major character in this. So what I discovered was that Goring's stepfather, his name was von Epstein, he was a physician. He owned a castle. He was Jewish.
Mm.
So Goring has this link to Jewish people and this whole crazy thing with the Holocaust killing all the Jews. So I learned a tremendous amount about the history of Germany,
Mm.
and that was some of what was going on.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. I think it would be a terrific series of films. So Hollywood, if you're listening, here's a book or series of books that are ready to go. What themes were most important for you to explore through the Maxwell family's rise in Bavaria?
Well, one of the things I had, uh, Elias Maxwell's father is a rabbi,
Mm.
and he lives in Austria. And Elias Maxwell, because he wants to own, he's an industrialist. He can't be Jewish. So he
Mm.
becomes what's known as a Kaiser Juden. He
Mm.
converts for the Kaiser. He converts to Christianity, and he goes to see his father, who's the rabbi. And his son is Abe Maxwell. Abe Maxwell was born in the beginning of the book in 1906, and he's in his 90s later when he tries to get the company back, which has been absorbed into Lufthansa. Abe's 3 years old when he visits the grandfather. And so the grandfather wants to see the son, and he's a mathematical prodigy. And so the grandfather asked the little Abe, the 3-year-old, to do this, very complex mathematics. And Abe, this little kid, says, "I can only do that if my dad is here." And the dad is this Kaiser Jew who's converted. So the now Christian convert goes to see his father, and his father disowns him because
Mm.
he's converted. So I have one of the major themes is the difficulty that Jews had in Germany trying to just survive and have companies. And at the same time, I wanted to point out that there were important Jews during the war.
Mm.
Melita von Schiller von Stauffenberg, she was the most important test pilot for Goring. And I think you guys who are listening to this,
Mhm.
Google this because it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
She's Jewish and she's the most important test pilot for Goring, and she's a female on top of that. I wanted to study the assassination plot against Hitler. Tom Cruise kind of beat me to the punch with the movie, but I had done a tremendous amount of research, so you get to know about that. I also learned a great deal about the miracle at Dunkirk. People don't realize the miracle at Dunkirk, when all the British soldiers were able to get to Dunkirk during World War II and get back to England, the Germans captured 1.5 million soldiers uh, on the line between France and Belgium. And I discuss at great length how that occurred, how they took France, how Hitler took France in 30 days, and how Hitler would have won the war had he listened to Guderian, one of his generals, who was worked with Rommel. And so it's a whole different view of the miracle at Dunkirk. It's also a different view of how the Nazis were able to take France in 30 days. All the history is correct. And there's a new movie now with Russell Crowe playing Goring. I go into great depth into who Goring is, and we see his whole rise from being an ace pilot during World War I, flying with the Red Baron and flying with my Maxwell family, and then rising to the top with Hitler
Yeah.
through World War II.
I played Otto Frank in the Diary of Anne Frank
Oh,
in college, and I did a lot of research about the whole Holocaust, about Auschwitz and Buchenwald, and it was so disturbing that it really, at points, moved me to tears while I was doing the research. Was there any parts of your research or writing that was like very difficult to write and put down on paper and just do research on even?
yes. I was in Amsterdam, and I did go to Anne Frank's place.
Mm.
And Amsterdam plays a big role. Goring made a lot of money, and he was working with there were Jewish people that were brokering the paintings that Goring was stealing from other Jews who were trying to get the heck out of Amsterdam. Eventually, Abe and his daughter Rose, who's a prodigy pianist, I have an incredible scene with her playing in front of Hitler when she's about 9 years old. They end up in Auschwitz. So I had to study Auschwitz, and I studied Mengele, you know, and all the horrible experiments that he did.
Mm.
He wanted to test twins, and I won't even discuss what he did, but he
Right.
did horrible, horrible things. And when I wrote it, my mother was the first person to read the novel. She said, "Why are you putting in all this terrible stuff?" And I said, "I have to, because this is what happened during the Holocaust." I dialed it down a bit, but I did a lot of studying. Exactly what you're saying. I'm
Yeah.
almost in tears now
Yeah.
thinking about it. It's that powerful.
Yeah. It's unbelievable that humans were as merciless and cruel as they were, and they were on a mass scale. And it's frightening. Also frightening is this rise of anti-Semitism that we see today. What's your take on what's happening in America and what's happening across the world? I think your book is important because it reminds people of the horrors of the Holocaust. But what's going on?
Well, for me, in fact, I just spoke with a rabbi 2 or 3 days ago. I grew up Jewish. Been bar mitzvahed.
Mm.
Our prayers were that there was one God, monotheism. So my joke was that everybody was Jewish, because if there's one God, we all have the same religion.
Yeah.
And also our prayers were about peace on earth. That was
Mm.
the main theme of all of our prayers. And so anti-Semitism always struck me as confounding. In the
Mm.
case of Germany, a lot of, the top people that own the wireless systems, the newspapers, the theaters, physicians, dentists, they were all Jews. And so there was jealousy there. And that was a whole theme that I had never really uncovered before until the Bettelheim thing. And so I really got into that it was an attempt to steal Jewish assets, and they was completely successful uh, in achieving that. I think today, a lot of the anti-Semitism, I don't want to get into it today, but a lot of it has to do with what happened in Gaza and the
Mm.
problem. October 7th, I think October 7th should have never happened.
Mm.
And once that happened, that when Hamas moved into Israel, the Jews were stuck.
Mm.
And frankly, I think they should have come up with I don't know what they should have done, but they certainly didn't do it the right way as to how to retaliate after the horror of October
October
7th.
7th. Yeah.
And so I think a lot of the young people today are only looking at what's happening in Gaza, and not realizing the total picture of what the Jews have had to deal with. There were only
Yeah.
3 million, well, I think there's only 6 million Jews throughout the whole entire world.
Mm.
And, there's a billion Muslims, there's I don't know how many billions of Christians.
Mm.
So it's just a tiny percentage of Jews. So you're asking them a very important question. I don't know.
Mm.
Uh, but I certainly put a tremendous amount of research into this book, and I hope that it would give a different perspective on the Jews' role, particularly in Germany during World War One and World War Two.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, a good reminder of the Holocaust is important. And I think you're right. I think the young people today are looking at the historical perspective of how Jews have been treated throughout history, and particularly during World War II, when as many people, as many Jewish people who are alive today in this world were murdered by the Nazi regime. Um, where does this series go? Two books are out right now. Talk to us a little bit at the overview of the series.
Well, it's called the Rudy Stein quadrilogy. Rudy Stein is the
Yeah.
ace reporter for modern times. So the first novel, Rasputin's Nephew, had to do with him uncovering the Russians have created psychokinetic soldiers and they're trying to kill American parapsychologists. And then I came upon this idea of Rudy runs into his own double in Germany, and that ties him to the backstory. And so that's two novels. One good thing about the Holocaust, I mean, Abe, I'm not going to tell you how he does it, but Abe escapes Auschwitz with his daughter. And so I had a lot of fun figuring out how the heck someone would escape that horrible situation. And then there's a fourth novel. It's called Fate Line. I'm also a handwriting expert. I've been a handwriting expert for many, many years.
Wow.
And I've had some unbelievable cases. One case I had where new information came in 3 days before trial. And I rewrote a new report and I told my lawyer, I said, we got to send this to the other side. And the lawyer said, no, you don't have to do that. I can deal with the judge. Well, the judge told me, he looked me in the eye and he pointed right at me. He says, you will not talk about this new information. It came in too late and I couldn't win the case. So I had to raise my hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. He just stopped me from telling the entire truth. I didn't know what to do. But expert witnesses have to get their information reduced many times.
Mm.
So basically, I felt that I had sinned against God.
Yeah.
So I rewrote the novel with it's called Fate Line. Instead of it being me, I have him. His name is Bruno, and he's kind of takeoff from Bettelheim. And another, Felix Klein, who was a Holocaust survivor, was a graphologist. So he raises his hand. He's due to swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And the old 80-year-old Holocaust survivor says to the judge, Martin, I'm not going to tell you. You're preventing me from telling the whole truth. And the judge says, I'm citing you in contempt of court. And Rudy Stein, my ace reporter, comes in, and he's got a great he's got a great story. Holocaust survivor gets imprisoned for telling the truth, and he's expecting it to be on the front page of Modern Times magazine. And then an ice skater gets uh, kidnapped out in Utah. It's kind of a takeoff on the Jumper A. Ramsey case. So I have four novels: Rasputin's Nephew, Doppelganger, and Crystal Night, which are together in Maxwell Chronicles,
Mm.
and then a fourth novel called Fate Line, which kind of is a takeoff of my life as a graphologist, and there's a murder mystery in there as well. So those are the four novels.
Wonderful. Well, we will look for the quadrilogy. Not a word you hear a lot, but it's a great word. I won't forget it now, that's for sure. The name of the book we've been primarily focusing on today is called Maxwell Chronicles, Doppelganger and Crystal Night, special two-book saga. It is a powerful blend of World War I aviation history, World War II survival, and a modern investigative mystery that pulls every thread tight. Marc, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you so much. It's great to see you. And I do remember, when you were on the news here at WPRI.
I appreciate that. Had a lot of great years working in Providence, Rhode Island. I call it a gem of a state. It's tiny, but beautiful. Thanks for your time today, Marc. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford for the Global Book Network. So long for now.